You're watching Fish Plates and Scratch Builds. I'm Jonathan, and today I'm going to share some fantastic ways to research the real railways so you can build the most effective miniature ones. Let's take a look. Whether it's pictures of work-worn locos to get that perfect weathered look, or old maps to help create a prototypical track plan, looking at how the real railways have done things can be invaluable to many model railway projects. We live in a world where information is at our fingertips 24/7, but where exactly do you go and how do you get started? Well, stick around because I'm going to share some of my favourite websites and top tips on using them. Now you can jump to any section of the video using the timestamps, and I'll also include links to every resource I mention in the description below. Now, I'm not going to cover any form of research that requires a trip to view physical documents at county or national archives, nor am I going to look at overly costly paid subscription services. They're all valid forms of research, but I want to focus on methods that you can do right now, not necessarily leaving the comfort of your home. And finally, if you want to publicly or commercially reproduce any information or images, you'll often need to buy a license or gain permission from the rights holder. Now, I'm clearly not a lawyer, and I'm definitely not going to get into copyright law in this video. So for the purposes of this video, let's assume that all information you find is going to be used for your personal reference only. All good? Well, let's get started. So, first up, the simplest of sources and perhaps the most obvious, books. The internet may be vast, but books about railways can be incredibly specific. That niche detail you're looking for? Well, it could be right between these pages. Now, naturally, where there's an interest in railways, there's often an interest in model railways too, and I'm thankful to several authors who thought to include scale drawings of certain railway buildings in their books, hugely helping my scratch build efforts. Don't forget to support your local library if you can too. Ashford Library in Kent has a specific section for railway reference books, thanks to the town's rich railway history. And not just books either. Magazines, journals, newsletters, various printed promotional media, and even copies of governmental railway acts. If you only need a single image or piece of information, this could be a really cost-effective way of obtaining it. But if you'd sooner buy and own, then books on railways and railway-adjacent subjects are often in abundance at model railway exhibitions. If you're looking for something more specific or rare, there are many second-hand booksellers operating both in the real world and the digital one, with potentially wider inventories. And don't forget your local preserved railway too. They'll often have a supply of donated books for sale, with the funds going towards the railway's upkeep. Which brings me neatly to railway museums. I volunteer at the Colonel Stevens Railway Museum at the Kent and East Sussex Railway. It's a treasure trove of artefacts and information on all of the Colonel's lines, plus assorted light railway ephemera. There's much more in the archives that isn't always on display to the public too, so it's always worth getting in touch and seeing how your museum can help you. After all, preservation's pointless unless we can share it with others. The internet is vast and positively crammed full of information, some of it useful and some of it not so much. When looking for information, you'd probably be tempted to just start typing into your search engine of choice and see what comes up. Well, I have some tips to make your searches even smarter. For simplicity, I'll be using and referencing Google's search engine throughout this video. You'll find much of the same functionality across other search engine platforms, but the exact layout, links, and feature names may vary from what's shown here. Search engines work by constantly trawling the internet and using what they find to construct a massive index of pages. When you look for something specific, the search engine cross-references your words with the index and returns the results it thinks are the most relevant. It's how they work so fast. The search engine's algorithm then orders these results from what it believes to be the most relevant to the least relevant. Lots of factors influence this process, including your exact search terms, obviously, but also your location, your previous search history, and even what device you're using. For example, if you're on a mobile device, the algorithm might prioritize mobile-friendly sites. The internet is formed from an estimated 1.34 billion websites, and that's not counting all the individual pages those sites are made from. So how do you cut through all this and make the algorithm work for you? Firstly, the words you use, your search terms, do matter to an extent. Being too vague could present you with an overwhelming list of results, but being too specific could narrow the field so much you end up missing something relevant. Start your search simple and add more detail each time to refine the results you get. To help with that, let me introduce you to operators. No, not that kind. These are special commands and characters you can add to filter your search results. Let's look at an example. If I search for images of a Great Western signal box, I get mostly models and kits. This is because the search engine is trying to guess my intent. It's possible that a lot of people who search for signal boxes end up buying a model of one, so it decides to show me physical products. Plus, it probably knows that I've bought plenty of model railway stuff before, so it's not that bad a guess. But what I really want are images of the real thing. To filter out unhelpful results, we can use the exclude operator. Just type the minus symbol and a word, without a space, and anything matching that search term will be excluded. It's not perfect, but it can help more useful answers reach the top page. Here's another one. If I search for the East Kent Railway, I get pretty good results, because it's a recognised place. But if we scroll down, we can see that results for the nearby Kent and East Sussex Railway also show up, because the same words are found in their name too. Now, what we can do about this is we can put the search term inside double quotation marks, and this tells the search engine that we're looking for results with this exact phrase only, not just results containing some of those words. Now, this is particularly useful if you're looking for a specific technical term or quote. Some of the, let's say, less formal pages on the internet can be something of a rabbit warren to navigate. But did you know that you can use a search engine to search within the pages of just one website? If you haven't visited before, igg.org.uk is a fantastic source of information on prototypical railway freight movements, but it's also densely packed with detail. Using the cite function, we can type the web address igg.org.uk, again, no space, and then a search term of our choosing, in this case, milk, which will return all pages where milk is mentioned. I tell you, this is an absolute game changer. Operators can be really useful when you're just not getting the results you want. Here are the ones we just looked at, but there are many more. Remember not to put spaces between the operator and the search term you're using with it. You can also stack multiple operators in one search to really refine those results. It's also worth being mindful of sponsored results. These often appear at the very top of the page, but it doesn't mean they necessarily match your search particularly well. They can appear because your search is related to a certain product, or because a company has paid for them to appear higher in search rankings. Just look for the word sponsored somewhere on the entry. If you've ever searched for photo reference online, you'll probably have encountered the same problems as me. Images that are poor quality, too small, or just not what you're looking for. And yet, for modelers, they're probably one of the most important resources for applying those fine details to our builds. Give these tips a try, and I promise it'll make future image searches a breeze. Most search engines have an images filter, which lets you see only the image results returned by your search. Google also lists some additional suggestions along the top. Clicking one will simply add that word or phrase to your search. Now, you may find this useful if you're just not sure what it is you need to type. Once you see something you like, click the image and the side panel will open to give you a larger preview. Scroll down this panel and you'll see a small selection of images that the search engine thinks are related specifically to the photo that you picked. You can click on any of these alternative results and maintain your original search on the left. This can sometimes give you more relevant results or take you on a completely different tangent. If you want to download one of these images, right-click the larger preview image and choose Save Image As, and select somewhere on your computer to save it. Now, when I go to view that image on my computer, it's really small and blurry, and if I zoom in, I can't really see anything at all. This isn't as helpful for my research as I'd hoped. So what's going on here? Every image is made of pixels. The greater the number of pixels, the more detail the image will have, usually meaning it'll appear bigger on your screen. The size of an image is known as its resolution, usually expressed as two numbers separated with an X. Most PCs use a 1920 by 1080 resolution, so any image with a resolution over 1000 is generally decent enough. Smaller resolutions will appear pixelated or blurry when enlarged, so if you're after fine detail, you really want to look for the larger resolutions. But how can we tell before we get this far? Let's return to the search engine's side panel. Hover your cursor over the preview image and in the bottom right corner, you'll see the resolution of that image. This one is almost 3 times smaller than my screen resolution, so no wonder it appeared very small. Did you know that you can actually search by image size? This rather unassuming tools menu offers some handy options for further filtering your search results. You can choose by size, color, upload date, and more. Selecting the large size shows only results that are 1024 by 768 or greater. Be mindful of any photos originating from Facebook. Although the reported image resolution is accurate, you can't actually save it in that size from the search engine, as we've been doing so far. You will have to visit Facebook itself before you can download it in its full resolution. Once there, you can use the right-click menu, Save Image As, just like before. We'll talk more about Facebook later in the video. Because search engines are essentially trying to aggregate the entire internet, they'll never be able to show you everything relevant to your search. So I'd always recommend visiting the website the image is hosted on by clicking on the Visit button. The image may be part of a larger page or article, or feature in a series of related images that Google wouldn't otherwise show. Often, images will be at a low resolution to save space on a website or to protect the copyright holder's property. Contact information is usually available, so it can be worth getting in touch with the owner to see if they would be prepared to let you access an original for research purposes. The internet is also full of duplicates, so it's possible to find larger or higher fidelity versions of the same image elsewhere. If you've used Google before, you've probably seen this symbol. It's Google Lens, part of Google's AI functionality. It scans an image and looks for similar or identical images, basically using images rather than words as the basis for its search. This can be useful for finding alternative versions of the same image, perhaps of better quality or from a different angle. You can also adjust the focus area by moving these handles to train the lens on a specific area of the image and have it identify specific objects. It'll provide an AI-generated description of what it thinks it sees, and it's not always accurate, and you can then look for exact matches or images that look visually similar. You can also try this method using a photo from your own computer. It doesn't have to be one you find online. Just click the Google Lens icon or anywhere that says Search by Image and select Upload a File. After that, all the same rules apply. Okay, we need to talk about AI. Wait, don't leave the video just yet, let me explain. Aside from help with the odd video title and video description, which only the dreaded algorithm reads anyway, I don't use AI to make these videos. Everything you see here is 100% me, from the visuals to this script that I've spent weeks writing. I believe AI can be used to get a project started, to point us in the right direction, or even troubleshoot a particular issue, but I don't think it should replace genuine human expression or creativity wholesale. No matter what you think about AI, it is still a tool in the toolbox, and one that can be used either effectively or poorly. AI is getting better, but it's still not perfect, and used alongside rational human reasoning and critical thinking, it can be a powerful ally. Now, you'll have seen by now that in a lot of these searches, there's an AI summary at the top of the results. It's actually very similar to how the search engine does things, except instead of presenting you with a list of sources, it produces a short written summary of the pages it determines to be most relevant, and that's usually the top 10 to 35 results. In most cases, it does also list its sources, which you can then check out yourself. Ultimately, AI is about as good as the information to which it has access. If I ask for help with a complicated function in Excel, I'm likely to get a decent result. Excel uses a consistent and logical language, and there's about 20 million help articles online it can draw from. But ask it what the first departure from Hawkhurst to Paddock Wood would have been in 1952, and it's going to struggle to pin it down. Although it did make a pretty good guess. In this exchange, I gave ChatGPT a photo of Adalford Green. It picked out the station running inboard, the man in the foreground, and even the milk churns. Then, after it absolutely annihilated me with flattery, I asked it to identify the loco in the image. And it very confidently told me it was a terrier, likely an A1X in fact. This was based on the wheel arrangement, which it couldn't see, and a variety of other factors that were true in practice but didn't actually apply to this image. When challenged on this, it gave me an excuse. My amazing photography blindsided it apparently, and it corrected its answer. For some fun, I then showed it an image of one of Rapido's recent Evolution carriages, and once again it confidently told me I had an SECR birdcage. It's those raised lookouts on the end that gives it away apparently. Of course, this isn't fair because the Evolution carriages are generic and not actually based on a specific prototype. So I gave it some hints and told it the image was of a new ready-to-run model made by a popular manufacturer. Could it tell me which one? Yes, it could. Okay, so this was a silly example, and I'm asking hyper-specific questions about a niche hobby here, but it goes to show how easily incorrect information can be presented as fact. AI does state its sources with each answer, and you can click on them to verify the information. You can also challenge AI to tell you where it got certain information from and ask it if it can locate further supporting evidence. Like anything you see online, don't take your first answer as fact. A handy framework I've recently learned about for using AI is GCSE. Give the AI a clear goal. Tell it the context. Provide any specific sources for the information to come from, and detail your expectations for the end result. Here's an example using ChatGPT. My goal was to create a list of all 00 gauge models of Class 08 diesel shunters produced since 1990 until today. My context, I'm looking to buy a new model of an 08 shunter and I want to see what my options are. I'm looking for a balance between good quality and good price. For the source, I want you to look at all major UK model railway manufacturers and include second-hand listings on ebay.co.uk. Also look for forum posts on RMWeb for any specific user comments. And my expectation is that I would like a top 5 list ordered by user rating and how well received each model was. Okay, let's see how well it did. Well, because I primed ChatGPT to look for good value, it's striking a balance between cost and detail. It started out well by listing Bachmann's run of 08 shunters from the year 2000, but then it got a bit confused and mixed in the 2005 releases here too. It mentions the more detailed Hornby model from 2005, but no sign of their releases in 2010, and they're the same tooling, but they might have had different features. It also lists older Bachmann models, but it's actually referring again to the 2000s models, and it skips Bachmann's most recent 08 release. but it does include Accurascale's imminent newly tooled Class 08 as well. Now, all this could be because I asked for a top 10 and I wasn't specific enough about dates and features, so sometimes it's worth asking more questions to see if you can refine your results and shake the truth loose. In this case, I would want to look into each model individually anyway, but this basic overview gives me a really good place to start. As efficient as search engines are, they're working with an unimaginable amount of information. And for all the filtering tools available, they just aren't always going to find everything that you need. Sometimes it's worth going right to the source. Here are some of my favourite websites that I'd absolutely recommend checking out. Sometimes your specific modelling query has already been asked and answered many times before. That's where model railway forums come in handy, because you can see those conversations often long after they've taken place, saving you the hassle of asking the same question yourself. Forums like Reddit and RMWeb, or communities on websites such as Facebook and Hornby.com can be great sources of information from people with real-world experience and knowledge. Just remember, you can't always trust everything that's posted on the internet, so it's always worth getting a few second opinions. With over 350,000 images of both rail and road transport, from UK steam to modern traction, ColourRail stands as a prominent source of railway imagery. The search function includes the option to filter by loco number, date, location, or by entering a specific search term. You can download a digital copy right away, or submit an order for a physical print in various sizes. ColourRail can also supply higher resolution scans specifically for modelers who wish to see certain elements in an image at a greater level of quality. There are costs associated with each of these options, but ColourRail might just have what you can't find anywhere else. If you're looking for information about a station that's no longer with us, Disused Stations might be able to help. It's a fantastic record of UK stations that have sadly been lost to time. Entries are listed alphabetically by name and generally include a written history, maps, photos, scans of tickets and timetables, and links to other useful sources. Over time, new additions are added to the collection, so it's always worth checking back to see what's new. On Historic England's website, under the Images and Books menu, you'll find the option to find photos and images. Here you can browse over 1.7 million entries, including imagery of street life, buildings and everyday scenes, as well as maps and plans with architectural detail. I absolutely love this beautiful vision of tomorrow at Ashford International Station. So evocative. It's also worth checking out Historic England's architectural red box collection, which they've called England's Places on the website. Search for an English place name to see high quality scans of images dating from the earliest photography in the 1850s up to the early 1990s. Subjects include churches and country houses, historic buildings, and even modern architecture too. Even outside of railway modelling, it's a fascinating historical collection to get lost in. Geograph is a community project which aims to create a photographic collection of literally every place in the British Isles. Photographs are placed into grid squares based on where they are in the country. Now, it can be a little confusing at first glance, but if you want a broad overview of an area, I'd recommend using the Coverage tab. Click a number in an area to see any photos associated with it. Popular areas may have lots of photos, so click on More Images to see the full collection. If you want to get even more specific and see images of a particular street or building, you may prefer to use the Subjects tab, which uses blue dots to more clearly represent every location with a photo. Click on each blue dot to see the image. Once you select a photo, related photos appear down the right-hand side, which may help you locate alternatives of the same building or area. Each photo offers the opportunity to download a copy, sometimes with a range of resolutions to pick from. I find they're often quite small, but depending on your needs, this may be enough. Another of my favourite sites is the photo hosting site Flickr. Photographers often use this website to showcase their work or share acquired photographic collections, but it's certainly not just about modern imagery, far from it. Run a quick search and you'll soon find results from across the last couple of centuries. The basic search tools include the option to filter by date, which can be really useful if you want to focus on imagery from certain eras. Each photo tends to include relevant information to help identify place, date, or in some cases, specific locos or stock. And in comments from other users often add additional insight. And depending on the owner's preference, there's often an option to download a copy of the photos too. Social media is something of a polarizing topic, but I must admit that some of the most useful images I've found online have been shared by users of Facebook. Now you'll find countless groups dedicated to sharing memories and photos of times past, from local area groups to pages centered on topics such as railways and transportation. Some groups require you to join as a group member, which is a completely free formality that helps to keep the group secure, but many others can be viewed freely. Sometimes more useful than the shared images themselves is the local and historical knowledge provided by the group's members. Content from these groups quite often turns up in search engines, and you don't need a Facebook account to view them, no matter how much the website suggests you do. Although they typically feature more modern day imagery, another decent source of visual reference material are stock image websites. Sites like iStock, Alamy, Shutterstock and Adobe Stock feature a staggering number of images of just about anything you can imagine. Each site has its own unique collection, so it's worth checking them all out for some potential alternatives. Now you can preview each image at a reasonable size, but the full resolution download will cost money if you need greater detail. Sites like Unsplash and Pixabay offer high quality downloads absolutely free of charge, even if their collections may be less relevant to your needs. Now, because these image collections are broader in subject, you're less likely to find those really niche railway images, but if you're starting, say, a scratch build project and want some reference material of a rundown farm or a modern day shopfront, you might find just what you're looking for here. And of course, don't forget YouTube too. If you're running a search for a particular topic and there's something relevant on YouTube, then the chances are it will show up in your search. But it's always worth checking YouTube directly. You'll find all kinds of hidden gems, such as uploads of archive film, drone camera footage of old railway lines or sites, urban exploration videos, and even TV quality railway documentaries, such as those produced by the fantastic channel Rediscovering Lost Railways. From one form of imagery to another, let's talk about aerial photography. Britain from Above features thousands of historic aerial photographs from the Aerofilms collection, showing how towns, cities and landscapes across Britain have changed over the last century. The images date back as far as 1919, giving a rare bird's eye view of the country long before modern satellite imagery was available. You can type a place name into the search bar and see what comes up, or browse the map. There are zoom tools at the top and you can click and drag to pan across the map. The numbers represent the number of images in that area. Zoom in enough and they'll turn into individual markers, placed to show the rough areas that they cover. Click a marker for a preview of that image, then click any image thumbnail to see it in full. Images can be viewed full screen and zoomed in to quite a decent degree. There are no visible controls for this, but you can click, double click to zoom or use a scroll wheel on a mouse if you have one. There's some real detail to be seen in these images. A lot of the images feature annotations by other users too, often leaving additional historical detail or identifying specific places within the image. And this can be really useful if you're looking for one building in particular. We're going back to the Historic England website next, but this time we're looking at their Aerial Photo Explorer. Now their collection contains over 540,000 digitised photos from a much larger collection of over 6 million photographs currently preserved in the Historic England archive. I'd recommend using the full screen application for this. Enter a place name in the search bar and the map view will zero in on that place for a better look. The panel on the right gives some basic filter options and also explains what all the symbols mean. You can toggle satellite imagery for the underlying map on or off too. Historic England also gives access to the Aerofilms collection here. They're the purple diamonds on the map. So there is some overlap with Britain from above. You can easily view these images here too, but you will miss out on the wonderful user-submitted annotations we saw previously. The red circles appear to be unique to Historic England, and they show much more modern colour imagery. The large rectangles are vertical imagery, which are photos taken looking straight down from a plane, the shape showing the area of coverage. I love how some of these clearly show the path the plane was taking to capture these images. Viewing the images works much like the Britain from Above website. Once in the image itself, there's a full screen button top right and zoom controls at the bottom. Click and drag to pan across the image. If you require a physical or larger digital copy of any of these images, Historic England has services that enable this for a fee. I think maps are possibly my favourite category in this list. I find it fascinating to directly compare how places have changed over the years. And with so many online resources available to us, using these resources is easier and more accessible than ever before. So I'm going to start with what I feel is the best resource on this entire list, the National Library of Scotland's geo-referenced maps. What they've essentially done here is they've taken old maps of the UK and stitched them together like a mosaic. This page allows you to scroll across them as one unified map, much like most modern map services. But not only that, it has a slider which allows you to alter the transparency, meaning you can switch from old map to modern satellite imagery or stop halfway with one map visible over the other. Now it looks a bit complicated at first, but let me run you through it. First, you can either search for a place name or just zoom and scroll to where you want to go. You can also search by grid reference, latitude and longitude, or even postcode. Adjust the slider to show whichever map makes it easiest to locate your chosen place. You can then customize the actual maps being used. Firstly, there's tons of options for the underlying satellite imagery. By default, it's set to the ESRI's world image, but there's also options from Google, Ordnance Survey, and others. Then comes the fun part, applying an historic map. As you can see from this menu, there's a lot. My absolute go-to favourite is the OS 25-inch, which covers the years 1892 to 1914, ideal for catching many early railway systems. It's also the most detailed map available, with 25 inches on the physical map, representing a real-world mile. You have the usual zoom and pan tools to move about, a full screen mode, and of course that slider to overlay the maps. But there's even more. There's a 3D mode, which I have to admit I didn't find too useful, and what they call spy mode, which puts the historic map inside a spyglass, which you can easily move around the modern map. Side-by-side mode does just that, organising the maps beside one another and synchronising your movement between them. You can also search and view each map individually by using the Map Finder feature. This incorporates a grid overlay which you can use to determine exactly which individual map has been used to create that square. Choose your map, set the time period you're interested in, and the map will give you a series of options for each grid square. You can also order copies of each map for a fee, with formats from digital downloads to physical prints at the map's original size. These tools are absolutely invaluable for locating the path of lost railways, demolished buildings, or understanding the geography of a place at a time before the development of the modern day. Okay, the next big one is Google Maps. So big in fact that it is the most used mapping service in the whole world. But instead of using regular old Google Maps, I'm going to encourage you to use Google Earth instead. It has a lot of the same features, but one extra one that I think you'll enjoy. Its basic features will probably be quite familiar by now. You can zoom, pan, and search for specific locations. You can toggle between the vector map and the satellite imagery using the layers in the bottom left corner, and you get a few extra options not present in Google Maps. So let's zoom in a second and click this button here, Show Historical Imagery. That's right, you can now scrub through the various years of satellite imagery for a given area. Right now, we're looking at images taken in 1940. Exactly what's available will vary by area, but most places seem to have at least a few options, especially from the early 2000s onwards. In fact, you can pick a year, zoom right out, and get a good idea of what areas are covered by that imagery. The execution isn't as seamless as the National Library of Scotland's version, but it's still incredibly cool. Sticking with Google Earth, let's look at Street View. We know how this one goes. Click the little chap at the bottom, and all roads that have been photographed come up in blue. Now click any blue road to be instantly transported there. You can click and drag to look around, and use the arrows to move along the road. But did you know you can also view Street View imagery from previous years? Click See More Dates at the top right to literally do that. This little carousel now shows all available imagery from the previous years. As always, results will vary, but some places have images taken more or less every year throughout the 2000s. Now you might wonder how this is helpful, so let me show you some specific examples. If we go to look at Turnpike Lane Station in London on the most recent imagery, we're popped way across the road here, and from some angles, the traffic is actively blocking our view. But if we look at the range of alternatives, this shot from 2020 looks good. Not only are we closer to the building and the traffic is largely out of our way, but we've got this beautiful sunshine, making it easier to see the building's details. Another quick example, Hanger Lane Station, also in London, seen here in a state of distress. It'd be nice to see the building in its prime, and apparently it had a refurbishment in 2012. So if we just go down here, find 2012, there we go, good as new again. This method is so versatile, I think it'll add a whole new dimension to getting that all-important visual data to support your model railway builds. Okay, so what if you're not a big Google fan, or their imagery just doesn't work for you? Well, there are some alternatives to consider. Apple users will probably already be aware of Apple Maps, and it does much of the same we've already seen. Vector map, check. Satellite view, check. I think you get the idea by now. But Apple also has its own version of Google's Street View, which they call Apple Look Around. By far the best way to view this imagery on a computer is using Apple Look Around Viewer. Any location with blue lines has been mapped, and each dot represents a unique image. Once inside the image, you have full 360-degree movement, and you can click to move through the images. Rather handily, there's a link here to see the same view in Google Maps, which can be very handy for direct comparison. They still appear to be expanding the service within the UK, with only London and parts of Scotland available, although Ireland and large parts of Europe are already covered. I was quite impressed with the quality of the images, so it's actually worth keeping an eye on this feature as they expand. Mapillary is another interesting option for getting that valuable street-level view. They have impressive coverage with varying levels of imagery across the world, all seemingly community submitted and taken from what looks like dashcam footage. The imagery is not 360 degrees in most cases, generally showing just a front view, which can make navigation quite confusing at times. Although there is a play button at the top, which will automatically move you through each image in the series, as if you're driving down the road. But I will warn you, if you're prone to travel sickness, I'd probably skip this feature. The image quality does vary greatly across individual submissions, but it's another option that's worth a look if you need something that you just can't get elsewhere. Bing is Microsoft's own search engine, with Bing Maps being their answer to every other major tech company's mapping service. It works in much the same way as the others, although there's no Street View functionality here at all. But you do get the usual vector map and satellite imagery, which gives a nice alternative option if you can't find what you need with Google or Apple. Then we have the granddaddy of them all, Ordnance Survey. And yes, it's exactly the same deal. A vector map, an option to view satellite imagery, and some tools for custom navigation. Now, with a pedigree like OS, these maps are probably going to be some of the most accurate in the business, and for a fee you can sign up for a premium account and gain access to other topical map overlays and a variety of other features. As always, it's whether or not this is worth the cost, and that's going to be down to your personal needs and preferences. For a refreshing alternative to all the obvious sources of cartographical information, why not try OpenStreetMap? OpenStreetMap is another community-run project which is built and maintained by people with true local knowledge. It works like most of the other maps we've looked at and has quite the incredible level of detail once you get down to street level. There's a variety of different layers to suit certain needs, but my absolute favourite, perhaps unsurprisingly, is the transport layer. Apply this and you'll be able to see, at a glance, the entire UK railway network, including preserved lines. Right-click any area and select Query Features to view a whole range of information about that location. Any one piece of information can be clicked again to see a visual overview, such as county boundaries, which get this lovely clear outline. Try this feature on the railway and you'll see the various routes that run on the line. Click that entry and you'll see a visual overview of the whole route. It works on roads, bus routes, canals and footpaths too. OpenStreetMaps is a detail-rich resource and well worth a look, especially if you're modelling something that still exists in the modern day. Similar to OpenStreetMap is OpenCanalMap, although they're completely unrelated projects as far as I'm aware. This one might be a bit more on the niche end of today's video, but if you have an interest in canals, it offers a comprehensive look at today's canal network, including associated infrastructure such as locks, bridges and tunnels. I'm using the Google Maps overlay on laptop here, but there's also an app for Android and iPhone users which includes functionality useful for actively navigating the canals while on a boat. And that about wraps it up for this video. These were just some of my favourite resources, and I'm sure there's many, many more that I don't know about. What are some of your go-to places for railway-related information? Why not share them in the comments below? Because I'm always looking for different ways to research the real world so I can make my miniature ones even better. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, take care.